Alright, this is going to be the final part of my February 2023 Next Fest showcase. We finally made it to the end, and we did it before the month was up. So props to me on that one. But without further ado, these are going to be the remaining favorite demos I had a chance to check out during the showcase. Alright, so we're starting things off with Meet Your Maker. This is the next game from Behavior, the makers of Dead by Daylight, and this is definitely a very different direction. The simplest way to describe this one, I guess, would be, what if we combine Doom with Super Mario Maker? And yes, I know it's a very weird thing right there, but our story here is that we are trying to gain genetic material and data for our mysterious benefactor inside our outposts. And to do that, we're going to go out into the world and steal from other players in order to power up our own stuff, while trying to avoid them doing the same to us. So the game itself is essentially split between two distinct game modes. You're going to go out into the world, first-person shooter style, in order to gather information and gain kind of the resources you need to power up your own place. From your own place, and as you set up outposts, you'll build them out much like what you're seeing here, with a variety of traps, enemies, and more, with players who will try to invade your place to take your data. It's very much in that same kind of gameplay loop as the kind of mobile, like real-time strategy or turn-based strategy kind of games we saw in the 2010s, where you need to set things up, people can invade your stuff, you invade theirs, etc., etc. So with that said, from the demo, I do have some issues with it that kind of hurt my enthusiasm for it. It seems like, as I said at the beginning, that this feels more like a game design, at least on the base building aspect, more for like troll behavior rather than designing interesting levels. You see, everything dies to a single hit, so the more kind of annoying or Kaizo level traps you set in your base, the better. Now, I don't know if you get stuck or you get defeated, does that stop you from invading that person's base again? Because during this demo, I could repeat this level for as many times as I wanted to, and there didn't seem to be any downsides to it. Now, the other point that I saw from this is that the demo itself, or the game itself, is going to be focusing a lot on kind of a live service, daily play focus, where you'll collect dailies and weekly missions. This will gain you special resources, and the special resources seem to be quite big. So just being able to spot how many traps there are in a given area. And for me, I kind of run into that same issue about why I'm not huge into kind of like the Fall Guys scene, where it's not about kind of like a high level play using these mechanics, but kind of running with the punches of the physics and the gameplay there. And that's what Meet Your Maker seems to be kind of playing up. Now, the other point that we didn't get to see in this demo was how much character progression or gear progression there will be in it. Can I unlock having multiple hit points? Can I get, X-ray vision or things like that? And I am really curious to see what is the long game of Meet Your Maker going to be. Like, how are they going to invest in this, and what is the content roadmap? So even though I'm not really as enthusiastic about this game as some other people, I still have to respect the design and what they're going for. So if you're looking for a first-person shooter that also lets you embrace your inner Kaizo troll maker, then this could definitely be a game worth checking out. And we now turn to Rin the Last Child. This is a Metroidvania action RPG, where the kind of twist here is that besides collecting upgrades as you would normally see in a Metroidvania, you're going to be able to customize and decide how you want your different spells and abilities to work. How this all goes down is that you'll collect various essences throughout the world. the essences themselves can be combined with other things that affect its attributes, such as something that makes it do more damage, something that affects the costs, and so on. You'll combine all of them together to form a functionally useful spell. And as the game goes on, you'll be able to upgrade spells using collected resources to unlock more passive slots, and things along those lines. And the kind of focus is that while you're going to be collecting your bread and butter Metroidvania skills, those have become permanently accessible, you're going to be choosing how your defensive and offensive abilities are going to play out and upgrade over time, which in of itself is a very nice touch. My main issues with this game, the first is that we didn't really get to see kind of how extensive the spell building or the spell design is going to be. And there is discussion on the store page about having multiple branches of the story, your choices matter, etc. And I don't know again what that extent is going to be. Now, a more serious concern I have with this game is that the demo had some major performance issues, and there were several points where it would just get some massive FPS loss at specific points in the level, to the point that it was not only messing with my ability to platform, but was also giving me a headache from how jerky it was getting. And that is going to need to be taken care of when this game is finally released. But there is definitely something here for Metroidvania fans looking for a little bit more customizing of their combat systems. And now we have Xenonauts 2, which, if you are somehow watching this and have never heard of Xenonauts, first, thank you for watching this video. But this is the sequel to what is essentially indie XCOM UFO Defense, a game that was made by fans of the original for fans of the multi-system design of XCOM. Again, XCOM with a hyphen, not without. And from what we played of the sequel, it looks like it's going to continue to deliver the turn-based time unit goodness of the franchise. From the demo, it kind of gave us the brief rundown of, again, the three main systems of your Geoscape, base management, and the turn-based combat that you see right here. You'll be outfitting your not, I guess, officially licensed squaddies with gear and unlocks you'll get from researching, and you will once again have to defend the planet from evil forces within and outside of it. From a UI UX standpoint, it does feel like a little bit more improved from when I played the first one, and certainly a lot improved from the original XCOM. One bit of UI trickery or design that I really did enjoy is that not only can you see or set up predictions for when you move units to different spots, you can actually see the damage prediction of where or what your percentage of hit will be from that spot before you commit to that turn. With that said, as I was saying at the start, this is very much like the original XCOM experience. You're still going to send units to probably die on their very first mission, curse the RNG or praise it when you get those lucky hits, and I'm sure things will escalate more and more as you play. If you're someone who liked the redesigns of XCOM and XCOM 2 by Firaxis, Xenonauts and Xenonauts 2 may be a little too old school for you in that respect. But if you are a fan of the original's design and looking for a modern kind of up-to-date work with it, then I would highly suggest checking out Xenonauts 2 when it is released. And now for something very different, we have Wantless. This is a turn-based tactical strategy roguelike that takes place in people's minds. I guess it's Xenonauts? Xenonauts? However you want to describe it. But we play as someone who is going to help people with their issues by diving into their minds and performing turn-based combat, which I guess is a very effective form of therapy. So this one has a lot of unique things going for it in terms of its gameplay and structure. So each turn that you have in it, you'll be able to use your various abilities based on the action points. Those are those kinds of white bars you see kind of in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. The twist is that the enemies will perform actions equal to the number of actions you do during a turn. So if you leave, let's say, 3 enemies completely alive, but you used up all your action points, then they're going to have basically the entire run of their turn to really mess with you. So there is definitely a dynamic here of trying to be as economically responsible as possible with your actions so that you kill the enemies, preventing them from being able to use your turns against them. Now, even with that said, there's even more to the uniqueness of this game, that your skills that you will choose before the running of a mission are fully customizable. Like we were talking about with Rin earlier in this video, you'll create a skill out of various parts. A part that will affect the range of the skill, the potency, how much of a cost it's going to have. And then when all that is combined, it creates that skill which you can then slot into your character before a run. And you have a limit of how many skills you can equip based on kind of the parts that you use. Each part has a cost, and your character has an overall kind of limit that you cannot exceed. And this one is definitely looking interesting. It does not look like this is going to be the game for casual or new fans of turn-based strategy, but if you're a fan of tactical strategy games and looking for another very different take on it, then I definitely suggest checking out the demo and more of Wantless. We now have Dark Envoy. This is the latest game, or the upcoming game, from the developer of Tower of Time. A game I really like as kind of a diamond in the rough. And while it was an interesting game, it did have a few, I guess, weird issues with some of its general pacing and structure. And from what I played of this one, it may also suffer some of those similar design problems. But we play as a brother-sister team in a world of both magic and technology, where you can be as much of a wizard or gunslinger as you see fit. And of course, something bad is going to happen, and these two are going to go on a massive adventure to possibly save the day or become rich as well. The twist here is that both characters are played entirely in real time. You can turn on or swap between a kind of strategic mode or play the game real time, and both characters are able to synergize skills as well as set up positioning and flanking and more to the enemies. So you play this real time. It kind of plays like a slower version of an ARPG. Now, with that said, one of the issues I had with this one is that whether playing this fully turn-based or real-time with time slowed down, neither version felt 100% good to play. There are cases where it felt like some of my skills weren't triggering when I wanted them to, and just trying to maneuver and organize characters around, or both characters, felt a little awkward. Enemies had the tendency to sometimes spawn literally behind you or right next to you, and I wasn't quite sure how I was supposed to get around that. Now, with that said, I did like what I was seeing in terms of how skills would interact and how you could use the environment to help you and hurt your enemies. And the idea of playing a co-op action RPG like this is very intriguing to me. I honestly don't know at this moment if I would recommend this game if you're going to play this strictly as a single player controlling both characters at once. But if you do have a friend and you're both into action RPGs, I would possibly recommend checking this one out for you and see if you can have a little buddy adventure while looting and shooting. Now up is Takara Cards. This is a kind of deck building, roguelike, I guess, space exploration style game. You are exploring the galaxy or galaxies in your trusty spaceship, and you're going to use the power of your cards and resources in order to survive and move from area to area. The combat itself works that you'll play the different cards. Cards can either move, attack, or combination thereof. And your mission is to deal with enemies, collect resources, and avoid their attacks, as well as running into them if possible. So in this one, you're going to have to be managing the enemies as they come in and where they're going. When you survive enough turns, you will move on or move back to kind of the main screen to make decisions, upgrades, and so on. It's a very interesting idea. My one big issue that I had with it was the tutorial was not the best. Not only did it feature different art than you see here, but it really wasn't explaining exactly what it is that we were trying to do. But if you are a fan of deck builders and looking for yet another different take on the use of cards, then I would recommend at least checking out Takara Cards. And now we turn to Ogu and the Secret Forest. This is a game where you play as Ogu here, a very charming, not quite sure what animal he is, but Ogu loves to go on adventures, and one day, going out with his trusty butterfly net, he kind of stumbles upon a grand mystery and may have to save the fate of all life as we know it from being destroyed. So what we have here is definitely a game that's aiming for the Zelda action-adventure-like category. Ogu will explore, solving various puzzles, collecting items, and just trying to figure out what is going on. I really do love the aesthetic and the art for this one. It just is so charming to look at. From what we played of the demo, the focus is going to be on puzzle solving with very light combat. If you're hoping for the Dark Souls of Ogu here, you're not going to be the right audience for this one. I don't know how advanced the game is really going to get, and if there will be like anything super challenging or spiky in it. But from what we played, this looks like a really great kind of weekend game, or a game for either younger audiences or to play with a younger fan nearby. Or if you just like a very charming action-adventure game, then Ogu is certainly worth checking out. But with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have a few more games to look at for this final showcase. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. We now turn to Enenra, which I hope I pronounced that right. And what we have here is basically the indie take on Metal Gear Revengeance. You play as, well, a cyborg, looks like ninja, and you're going to be fighting other cyborgs in increasingly overly elaborate battles and cutting up enemies. Now, the demo itself that we played on Next Fest was just basically like a few missions and a way of testing out the combat. And while I did like what I was seeing, there is a few issues or concerns that I have with this one. I would like to have seen, I think, a little bit more depth when it comes to like chaining moves or building out combos. You can kind of have like different moves based on whether you are locked onto an enemy or if you're just kind of free aiming. And while that does help, it still doesn't quite feel, I think, as intuitive compared to Revengeance, or even just any spectacle action game like a Devil May Cry or a Bayonetta. But for an indie developer to take on the just insanity of Revengeance is certainly worthy of praise alone, and I'm curious to see if they will be able to pull off all the ninja hacking, slashing, and jumping in the finished game. Speaking of jumping, we turn to Pizza Kid. And no, you're not going to be cooking pizza in this one. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, where you play as a pizza delivery boy slash martial arts master in a dystopian future. where you must roam the streets trying to defeat mutants and evil creatures standing in your way of saving the world and your favorite pizzeria. So while this may look like a Streets of Rage, this is done more in the style of like Splatterhouse meets Streets of Rage. You only move left to right, so you do not have kind of like the depth of field or the different plane. You're able to attack, jump, and perform special moves as you see fit. Now, one thing that I didn't like about this game was that it was a little hard with my controller to pull off some of the special moves. They use kind of like fighting game dynamics, so you have to do like horror circle maneuvers and stuff like that. I would have liked it if there was a way of maybe tying that to a shortcut button. But the combat felt very good to play. You can really exploit jump kicks in this one to some crazy effect. And this looks like it's going to be a very challenging side-scroller. So, if you're looking for another pizza-themed but yet not cooking pizza-themed game around violence, then definitely check out Pizza Kid. We now have CursedSword. This is another in the style of sliding character or sliding things across the room puzzle games. The concept here is that we are cursed. Every time we move, we gain power, increasing the amount of damage that we do. Your mission is to move around each room, killing enemies to regain your health, and charging up your attack so that you can just whack and destroy the strongest enemy in the room, get to the door, and get out. And I like the kind of aesthetic and charm of this one. Now, at the end of the day, this is still one of those style of sliding character or sliding box puzzles. So if you're not a fan of that kind of gameplay loop, then CursedSword is not going to change your mind. But I did like the theme, and I'm curious to see where they're going to go in terms of, I guess, different mechanics or things you will have to do later on in the game. So if you're a puzzle fan looking for a little bit more bloodshed to your puzzle solving, I would at least give CursedSword a check. Now up is the Last Starship. This is the latest game from Introversion Software, and they are once again returning to early access with their next high concept game. The Last Starship is essentially, what if we took the layers and kind of system building and construction side of Prison Architect, but we combine that with like an FTL-like, or I guess a spaceship-like. Your mission is to maintain, build, and keep your starships alive, go out and get into battles, complete missions, get more resources, and so on and so forth. Just like in Prison Architect, you'll have to hook up the wiring and fuel all around your ship, hope those things don't get destroyed during combat, and of course keep your crew alive, breathing, and not get sucked into the vacuum of space. Now, like Prison Architect, this is still like very rough early access, so if you're hoping to pick this up right now or at the time you're watching this video and getting a fully complete and polished game, it is definitely not there yet. They're doing the similar thing like with Prison Architect, that it will be grown and influenced based on the support and feedback they receive. So if you're looking to really jump in and kind of watch the growth and evolution of the game now, then you should definitely check this one out. But if you're wanting to wait for the game to get to like that level of polish and especially level of onboarding that the later additions or updates to Prison Architect eventually got to, then I would at least hold off and just admire this game from the safety of our home planet. And finally, for our last game of the Next Fest Showcase, this is Black and White, described as a dystopian visual novel war chess game. I think to put it in a little simpler terms, this is a tactical strategy or strategy RPG style. You'll control different characters, each with their own abilities that you will have to use to their max in order to get through the various maps and challenges. Now, you probably have noticed the elephant in the room right now. There is no English translation to this demo. In fact, there is no English option in it whatsoever, and I'm not quite sure if this game is going to have an English translation when it comes out. But despite having no idea what any of the text was saying, I actually did figure out how to win the battles in this game, and it looks like there's going to be some very interesting combat mechanics, each with the different characters. Unfortunately, I can't tell you anything about what the story is. I think I had more trouble figuring out the menuing than I did the actual combat. All I know is that this one character I'm pretty sure is evil, because every time they show her talking with her puppet, the music gets all dark and disturbing. And that is the extent of the character development that I could piece together while playing this game. So if you're a tactical strategy fan and good at reading, I think that's Japanese or Korean, again, is a language that I do not know, I would check out Black and White, and hopefully it will get an English translation so we can finally figure out what it is everyone is actually talking about in this dystopian world. But with that said, this epic part of Next Fest coverage is over. I never have to play another indie game for the rest of my life, or at least until the next Fest. If you'd like me to look at your game for a future video and stream, please reach out. Do the liking, subscribing, and bell ringing and all that good stuff. Check out the Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.